U.S. Africa Business Center hosts the Nigeria President Bola Tinubu at the NASDAQ in Times Square in New York. In honor of the occasion, the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu will ring the closing bell, the U.S. Chamber's bell ringing ceremony with President Tinubu taking place on the sidelines of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, symbolizing the significance of the economic ties between the United States and Nigeria. On the other hand, Goldman Sachs stated on Wednesday its 12-month forecast for Brent crude, $100 a barrel. It was 93 in their previous forecast. So that's they've expanded that as well. Of course, extended OPEC plus cuts, global demand growth, other triggers as far as that's concerned. Now, joining us to discuss from our Abuja studios, Esther Adegunle. She's an economist and assistant director at the DAI. Thank you so much for joining us, Esther. Good to see you again. Good evening. So, President Tinubu making history today at the NASDAQ in New York. What do you make of it? I guess the symbolism.
Good evening. Thank you again for having me. Always great to be here. Yes, it's been an interesting week for Nigeria in terms of our ties with the U.S., right? Earlier in the week, we saw the U.S. Deputy Treasury Secretary, Mr. Wale Adeyemo, here in Nigeria, and saying that, they want to partner more with Nigeria and they want to be able to invest in small, medium, and large enterprises now. And then most of this week, Mr. President and his team are spending it in the U.S. at the United Nations General Assembly and all of the side meetings, right? So, yeah, we're going to see the president ring that bell. The president had said clearly in a speech yesterday, right? Yesterday, their time, very early this morning, our time, that the question isn't if Nigeria is open for business. The question is if other countries are open to do business with Nigeria and Africa in an equal and mutual beneficial way, right? For me, that's a double-edged sword, right? Saying because we're really trying to attract private capital at the moment. Private capital goes beyond the speeches and all. Private capital looks at the fundamentals, right? So we do have our part to play. I know the president has a team here, right? So in terms of things around ease of doing business and ensuring that this capital we're trying to attract, when they get here, there's truly a mutual beneficial relationship for Nigeria and for the U.S. and many other countries that we're trying to bring in investment to the country at this moment.
The Minister of Finance, the head of the DMO, Debt Management Office, the NGX, others, also holding other investment meetings on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. What's your, I guess, how do you see that playing out in terms of what they're trying to achieve?
Well, it's clear, right? It's really about investment this period, right? When we see our key government officials outside the country, the key driver is attracting investment into the country. And if we look at the numbers from the NBS as at Q1 2023 this year, right, the numbers were very low. We were only able to attract $48 million. That's a low of 9 years, right? Even during COVID, we're attracting up to $100 million in a quarter and all. So the president and the team, right, they are totally aware of this. And so they are having lots of side meetings. I know earlier in the week, they met with ExxonMobil, and ExxonMobil, they were having conversations around them ramping up their production to 50,000, an increase of 50,000 barrels per day in Nigeria, which is quite significant if we can ensure that happens, right? They've also met with JP Morgan. This week, they're also going to be meeting with Meta and Microsoft to have conversations around how they can increase their contribution to the digital economy and all. So it's really all about investment, increasing investment into the country, which the country, in the words of the Minister of Finance, which the country badly needs this season, right? And so the outlook, the expectation is that in the coming months, I mean, as NBS releases the figures, maybe not for Q2, to be honest, but Q3, Q4, and more importantly for 2024, we want to see those numbers ramp up. We need to get back our investment, particularly foreign direct investment, which will promote growth, which will create jobs for the Nigerians, right? We want to see those numbers get back to the hundreds, the 200s, right? And go as high as 400, 500 million dollars per quarter. So yeah, that's the expectations from all of the meetings that they're having.
Thank you so much. Just quick breaking news. The U.S. Federal Reserve has left its benchmark rate unchanged. So no change there, just for our viewers and anybody else who's wondering. Jerome Powell and the U.S. Federal Reserve leaving the Fed funds rate between 5.25 to 5.5. So no change there, in line with what a lot of analysts expected. All right, let's still, Brent crude. I want to get your outlook. Goldman Sachs 12-month forecast saying it's going to hit $100. What do you make of that? What would it mean for Nigeria?
Yeah, so it's a possibility that it could hit $100 before the end of the year, right? Some people say before the end of October. So just look at it. We know the drivers, right, from the production cuts from Saudi Arabia and Russia, right, the sustained throughout the year. So that's going to affect the supply. From the demand side, we are beginning to see some stabilization in the Chinese economy. So that would affect, the demand, right? And winter is coming. So the thought is that winter is coming, and we know that during winter, there's an higher demand for crude oil, right? So it could reach the $100 before the end of the year. What's the impact on Nigeria? That's what people are very, concerned about, right? It's a double-edged sword, to be honest. It could be a combination of gains and pains. For an economy like Nigeria, that is an oil-producing country, for most oil-producing countries, these are good times, right, where you are earning more your revenue. And Nigeria, 90% of our foreign exchange revenue comes from oil, right, the revenue we get from it. So emphasis on if we're able to ramp up our production before the end of the year, from the average highest, actually, 1.2 million barrels per day, and if we're able to ramp it up to a 1.4, which the OPEC pegged us at earlier in the year, at about June, July, right? Then it means increased revenue. Then it means that we would have more forex in the market, right? So there will be more liquidity in the market. It will be easier for businesses and individuals to access forex, right? So that's the gain that can come. Of course, the pain is also another emphasis on if truly petrol has been deregularized, and if truly is going to be determined by market forces, then we could see a rise in the price of fuel at the filling stations, which is not what Nigerians really want at this time, right? So it's two-edged, gains, pains. We hope that the gains are truly more than the pains that could come out of that.
Thank you so much for that. What's your view on the new appointments with respect to the CBN, as far as the governor, that is the nominations, and the 4 deputies ahead of rate decisions next week? Now, we understand they may not be a decision next week, but we'll see what happens. But still, want to get your outlook on those new nominations.
Yeah, so the new nomination comes in at this time, and if we really look at it, it's a team with a combined experience of over a century. Expertise in the public and in the private sector, right? So they are, in terms of expectations, there are high expectations. We expect that this team will get into CBN, once they're confirmed, start work, and actually be able to do 2 things. I think the first will be around ensuring that the CBN is an independent authority, and can actually do its work around monetary policies. The second will be in terms of working more closely with the fiscal authorities, so it's easier. There's that alignment, and they can achieve their goals together, right? In terms of the MPC meeting, whether it holds next week or not, at the end of the day, the 2 big elephants, I would like to say, are still in the room. So when they're making those decisions, they will be looking at our inflation that is nearing 26%, with food inflation nearing, 30%, right? So that will be a key deciding factor, whether to hold rates or to increase it, whether marginally or significantly and all. So that's a major one. The second will also be around the forex, right? What can they do to ensure there's liquidity in the forex market? I think they will be looking at those 2 things, and we'll wait for them to start work. And in the next couple of days or weeks, we'll see them actually come up with these policies that we hope will certainly benefit the economy as a whole.
Do you, very quickly, do you think they can be effective? Because it looks like monetary policy hasn't really been that effective in trying to bring inflation down, and it seems like our FX issues are down to supply. So whoever's in charge, do you think you think they can make a difference?
I think that the truth is that they have one tool. There's only one tool that they have in terms of impacting inflation, right? And that's the interest rate, right? It hasn't been as effective, but would they will still continue to use it? But I know that when they work in alignment and coordination with the fiscal authorities, then the impact that the two authorities make will be more effective in controlling inflation.
It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Esther Adegunle, Economist Assistant Director at DAI. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.